Well, hey, this is James Riley.
And Beth Riley.
And it's another edition of our Artist Spotlight podcast series. Beth, who we got today?
Well, today we have Greg Townson of Los Straitjackets, the High Risers, and, of course, Nick Lowe.
Hey, Beth. Hey, James. It's great to be with you. What a pleasure to hear your voices and be a part of your podcast series.
Well, thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure. My pleasure. It's nice to connect with friends.
Absolutely.
For sure. So how have you been spending your time during this nationwide pandemic?
Well, Beth, I was already set up at home to record. I'm not a gear person. I don't have a big studio here. It's very, very minimal. But I have been able to record over the years some of my solo projects and contribute guitar tracks to things. And so when the pandemic hit, Los Straitjackets and Nick Lowe, we had been in Australia and New Zealand for most of February. So when I got back, we had already had some downtime that we had planned, and I had planned on working on a recording project, which ended up being my latest called Just Name It. So I had already planned on doing some recording when everything shut down. At first, it was a little bit like business as usual, except it was paired with a lot of concern for friends and family over what was happening. Kind of felt like, well, I was going to do this anyway. But when we were supposed to get working again and touring again in, I guess, the end of April, we had quite a busy year planned between Los Straitjackets and Nick Lowe. That's when it started to really hit me that, oh, gosh, this is going to be a different year. So I've continued to, thankfully, with Nick Lowe, who's in London, and his engineer, Tuck Nelson, who's also there with him, we've been able to do some remote recordings with him and the Straitjackets. We've all got the ability to record from home, so we've been able to collaborate on a few things that have come out. Los Straitjackets has released In My Room, a version of that seemed appropriate.
Absolutely.
We recorded a song of mine called Genesee River Rock, and a song of Danny Amos that he wrote called Space Junket that just came out. And then with Nick Lowe, we recorded a song called A Quiet Place that was just released. We've also recorded a couple of holiday tunes that will come out, I'm thinking, pretty soon for this upcoming season. And in addition to that, I've been working on a new record of instrumentals. So I've been able to keep busy, but it's been hard. It's hard not to see your colleagues and friends at shows, and I love to perform, as we all do in the band. It's been hard, but we're remaining hopeful that we'll be able to get back to work next year.
Hopefully so.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, we've got some dates booked in March, but that's probably wishful thinking. But we'll get back out there. One of the things is that being in the arts, as you know, you have to be resourceful. So it's not an easy road, pandemic or no pandemic. So, when you have these, nobody could predict this. And, but you do learn to roll with the ups and downs as they go along. Of course, this is a big down for everybody. But, but I've been heartened by seeing, the resourcefulness of my colleagues doing the live streaming on Facebook or, remote recording or, putting stuff out on Bandcamp and just figuring out ways to, the Zoom meetings and the listening parties and things. So there's been, you figure out a way to make the best of it. Certainly not an easy situation.
No. We'll catch up to some of the stuff happening right now, because you guys have put out a lot of great stuff.
But we put out a lot of stuff, that's for sure.
Yeah. We'll go way back first, and then we'll catch up there. Now, you're based in Rochester, New York. Did you grow up in that area as well?
I did. I was born in Rochester, and outside of a short period of time of living in Chicago, I've been here the entire time. So it's been an interesting place to be based. My experiences are a little different from being in a music industry town like Nashville or Austin, Chicago, Los Angeles. But it's been a good place to be. The community has always been very supportive of the different music projects that I've been involved in. And being in this area, within 3, 4, 5, 6 hours, you can be in so many different cities. up in the Northeast. So, the High Risers were able to do a lot of long weekend gigging. It's been good. It's been good here.
So did you experience any of the rockabilly punk scene in the late 1970s, early 1980s, like with Lane Gray and...
Oh, absolutely, Beth. I was ripe for that. I mean, I was on board with what was happening in New York City right when it was coming out. I mean, it was just my time, I loved all the bands coming out of New York at the time. And, being in Rochester, it's 5.5 hours away from New York City. We get things a little later than what was happening in New York. Comes to us a little bit later. It did come to us because all the bands that were working during that time period of the late 70s, we would make the trek down the New York State Thruway, and they would play at a local bar here called Scorgies. And I got to see a lot of those bands, and I loved it. As far as the rockabilly stuff, I already loved the 50s stuff before the revival of that time period happened. But when the Blasters came in out of Los Angeles, that first record just absolutely blew me away.
Yeah.
The first two Robert Gordon records that Link Ray played on, I loved those. The Straitjackets were the most commercially successful, but the band that I saw the most were the Rockettes. They used to come to Scourge. As a matter of fact, when I was 15 or 16 years old, the band I was in opened for them. They were an amazing live act. I can't really remember the records now, but the Rockettes were really, really good live, and they had a big fan base here. So, but I love the punk stuff and the new wave stuff, and of course I got on board with Nick Lowe during that time period with the stuff that he was doing coming out of London. I was a little biased towards the New York bands, but I loved it all. It was a really, really fun time period. It didn't last very long, but while it was going on, it was fun.
What kind of bands did they have in New York
that
you were into?
Bands, I liked just about all of them. The Ramones, of course, and Blondie was the most commercially successful, I guess. Talking Heads, Television was very varied. Richard Hell and the Voidoid. I liked James White and the Contortions. They were kind of a funky, I don't know what, hard to describe. I also liked Kid Creole and the Coconuts, who had this Latin sort of thing to what they were doing. So I was very open-minded about it. But it all came down to the same sort of aesthetic of, we're going to wipe away the sort of bloated corporate bands of the time period.
Right.
And it was very exciting. And it was back to 2.5-minute songs and which I just absolutely I haven't left that. I'm still doing that 30 years later. So it was a return to that sort of 60s sort of mentality that I had originally grown up with. In my high school, it was just me and a handful of friends. We were at risk of getting beat up for liking this stuff. It was quite a statement at the time.
Well, it's interesting that is coming out of like the Led Zeppelin and Grateful Dead. There's so many people with some really long songs, and nothing against that stuff, but it really was a shift in style for shorter songs that was very much a throwback. Even the punk stuff was a throwback in attitude. I've talked to so many people that discovered rockabilly out of punk because it was kind of the same attitude, I guess. There
certainly is that sort of rebellious nature about it. It's a rave up. Juvenile delinquent music is what they called it in the 50s.
Sure.
So it certainly had that element to it. The best of it had songs behind it and great playing and really good bands that had chemistry.
We did a podcast interview with Jason Smay and heard about how he came about in the High Risers and Los Straitjackets, which of course you guys played them both together. And so how did the High Risers come about for you?
To give you the short version, because we have been around for 20-something years. I had played in a group called The Essentials with Todd Bradley, who was my partner in the High Risers.
Sure. And he just put out something new too, actually. Yeah.
Yes, he did. He put out a great single. Yeah, it's fantastic. He and I had played in a group called The Essentials, which was kind of our university, our kind of our, how we learned to play and play gigs and all of that. And when that broke up, that was kind of a big band. It was like 5 or 6 people. Todd's brothers were in the band. I just thought, well, let's just do a trio and just strip it down and just keep it simple and not even try to write. Just do obscure rock and roll and rockabilly covers and R&B covers and instrumentals and just have fun. We had kind of a residency at a little club here called Rose and Crown. Our original drummer, Chris, left fairly quickly, and then Jim Simons came in, second drummer for the band, and it was his idea to start recording. And it hadn't occurred to me to do that. So when he was pushing for that, I thought, well, I better start writing. You know, we had come up with some kind of original arrangements of some of the covers, which were good. We could record those, but just to do like a straight cover, and you can never compete with the original versions of these songs.
Yeah.
So I thought, okay, well, I'll just start writing. And I wrote a song called She'll Be My Ruin, which was on the very first record. And it felt like, okay, this is the direction. This is what we'll do. So I started to write songs in that vein, which is a total rock and roll thing. And we did 2 records with Jim Simons, Panic and In the Spotlight. When Jim left the band, Jason Smay came on board, and we had a great 10-year run together. It was a great run. The 3 of us just really, the chemistry was perfect. And Jason was very ambitious, really wanted to get out of the area and do some touring. And I was writing lots of songs, co-writing songs. Todd was writing some songs. So it was just a good time period. We also had a local studio that we started to work in on a regular basis. So that was another part of the chemistry, Saxon recording. Our attitude was, let's just put out a record every year, and it'll be like a business card, We'll just keep putting out records. And what that did for us was there was people in Spain got on board. There was a promoter there who hired us after hearing the second record, In the Spotlight, and brought us over to play a festival. And that started us with this European touring. So that's kind of how things got started with Jason. We played regionally from Chicago to New York City, and we really kind of built up a nice following. We had Spin Out Records, which was Eddie Angel and Melanie Angel's label out of Nashville. So we had some support from them, and there were some labels in Europe that showed an interest. Sound Flat Records and Munster Records and Rock and Roll Incorporated Records, and later on Sleazy Records were putting out our stuff. From recording, it helped us get out of the Rochester area, which is a very difficult area to get out of because there's, as I mentioned earlier, there's really no music industry here, so you have to do it all yourself. It was a great 10-year run with Jason. We had a good time. I should mention that we have a new drummer, Trevor Lake, who's phenomenal. He's just so talented. When Jason left to move to Nashville and continue on with J.D. McPherson, we took a little hiatus, but then when Trevor presented himself, it was like, hey, this is our drummer. This is it. He's been great and super excited to play with the band.
That's awesome.
Oh, thanks.
So, Los Straitjackets, you joined them in 2010. How did that come about?
Well, at that point, Jason was already working with the Straitjackets. The High Risers were on Eddie Angel's label, Eddie and Melanie's label. And in 2004, the High Risers had gone on the road opening up for Los Straitjackets. One of my favorite tours that we ever did. We opened up their holiday tour, which included the Pontani sisters, who are so talented out of New York City, and then my dear friend George Miller from the Kaisers was the MC. And the High Risers opened up about 3 weeks of shows, and it was really, really fun. We had a great time on that tour. And eventually when Jimmy Lester left the Straitjackets, they hired Jason to play. So we were already in the same world. In 2010, Danny Amos, one of the founding guitar players along with Eddie, he got cancer, he got multiple myeloma, unbeknownst to me. And I got a phone call from our manager, Jake Rolnick, saying, Danny is sick, and would you be up for filling in temporarily while he goes through his treatment? And, I didn't even think twice about it. I just said yes, I just wanted to be able to help. And so I did that. I joined the band, and it's funny, I played the first gig, James and Beth, no rehearsal. We did it was it was a festival out in Pennsylvania somewhere. And, I was playing songs I'd never played before. They gave me a list of songs to learn. And I was playing a guitar I'd never played before because they gave me this DePinto guitar, which is who we are sponsored by. And, playing through an amp I never played through before, playing with a band I never played with before, doing choreography I'd never done before, all in a mask. It was a memorable gig for a lot of different reasons. But what happened is Danny went through his treatment, and thankfully he went through the treatment successfully. He went through a stem cell transplant. He just wasn't going to have the strength to tour again. He's had his ups and downs with his health over the years, but overall he's got a good quality of life. He's living in Acapulco, Mexico, which is like a dream come true for him. He loves Mexico. He can't tour, so they asked me if I wanted to join full time, and I said yes. So it's been 10 years now. Yeah.
That's cool.
It was a tough situation to walk into, quite honestly, because, Danny had his fans, and I have a different style of playing, than Danny's. Danny has a very singular kind of style of guitar playing. I mean, you really can't duplicate it. It's really a one-off style. I didn't even try to, replicate what he does. I just do what I do. And the band was open to that. They gave me the space to be myself and bring songs and bring arrangements of songs. So right away I could be myself with the band, which was huge. It's been a great experience, really.
That's cool. Now, you talked about Los Straitjackets and Nick Lowe collaborating. It's interesting. When I first heard about it, I was like, well, that's an odd mix. But the more you think about it, it's like it really works. I mean, what is it that makes it work so well for you guys?
Well, I know for our fans and for Nick's fans, at first it was like kind of an odd pairing. And I could tell from the audiences that when the first tour that we did, his fans, when we come walking out on the stage with our masks on, it's a little bit of a shock, And, for our fans, it's like they're not used. I mean, we had obviously worked with Big Sandy a lot,
sure.
So they're used to having us and different singers like Deke Dickerson and Kaiser George. They kind of open to the idea of us having a guest vocalist, but this was a different thing. The reason it's ended up working so well, it's Nick, I mean, it's his attitude. He didn't want us to just be like hired guns, but if you have somebody like John Fogerty, he's going to hire, a drummer and a bassist and a guitar player and
sure.
And it's John Fogerty. He goes out and that's what it is. And, and that's fine for that. But with Nick, what he wanted to do is the opposite to that. His first thing he said was, I want to join your band. I want it to be like, I'm a part of your band. And that's a completely different attitude than, I'm the star, you're the backing band. And he saw the long view of this, which was the surprise to me that, I thought we'd do the one tour and that would be it. But then he was like, no, we're going to do some more. And every tour up to this point that we've done, it's gotten better and better and better, more integrated. And he's written songs for us, specifically songs that he's written for us to play with him. And so those get incorporated into the show, arrangements of his older things. Don't replicate the old records. I want you to do your version of the songs, and I'll join you, doing those versions. So it eventually got to the point where there was no more he and us. It was just one show going out. And it's still a review. He'll leave the stage and we'll do 4 or 5 instrumentals and he comes back. And so there's still that element of it, but it's so seamless now. It's all one thing. It goes to Nick and his genius. That's what made him such a great producer.
Sure.
He could walk into a situation with any group and he could figure out how is this going to work, And that's why he was so successful as a producer. Same thing. It's been an unbelievable 5 years working with him. I mean, it's just... I really feel like I can retire after this, 'cause I've been so happy. I just love him so much. He's just so great.
Just recently, Black Friday Record Store Day release, Los Straitjackets, Beatles versus the Stones. You guys cover I Feel Fine and Time Is on My Side. And of course, it answers the question, which is better, the Beatles or the Stones? And you guys answer it, well, they both are. They're both. There is no right answer, one answer or something. But that's
nice.
That's pretty fun.
I Feel Fine is pretty much a straight ahead cover of it, the arrangement. But Time Is on My Side is a little more unique. That was Eddie or Chris's idea, I think. Beatles versus the Stones was just sort of a funny thing that we could do on stage. Yep Rock Records, we had recorded those a while back before the pandemic. Just trying to figure out a way to keep things coming out during this time, and keep everybody's spirits up by releasing this stuff.
Talking about Los Straitjackets, you guys wear a mask all the time. Do you have any funny mask stories? The mask that you guys wear is a little bit different than the pandemic mask.
I guess it allowed you to be ready for a mask. So
well, yes, we were way ahead of our time. That is true. I did post something early on in the pandemic of myself with the mask on, saying, hey, I'm a mask, no problem. I could. But it is funny. I love the mask because as I mentioned that first gig, going out there, I realize people are looking at me, but they can't see me. It's a very unusual feeling after being on stage, with the high risers and. Where you're thinking about your hair, and you're thinking about how you're appearing to people, and you suddenly realize that they can't really see me. So it works on so many levels. First of all, it's great because you haven't even played a note, and people are already interested. It's like you come walking out on stage with the mask on, and people, if they're not aware of what's going to happen, it's like, what is this? So I like the mischief behind it, and so does Nick Lowe, by the way. I mean, I think he loves the mischief behind it. And it takes your ego out of it. It really does, which is a good thing, for me anyway. I like it. I mean, for me, I can go backstage after we play, take off the mask, change my clothes, and I can go walking around, and if people don't know who I am, they don't know that I was just on the stage, and it's and one of the great things about that is you can actually hear people talking about the show, and you can get the real truth as to what people thought, instead of, yeah, that was great, man, like you're not getting that. You're actually overhearing people, yeah, that was good, but I don't know about that one song or whatever it might be, or I don't know about those masks, whatever it is. It's a great tribute to this part of Mexican culture that is so entertaining and so silly, and it's not taken seriously in Mexico. It's fun, and so. Down there are this is the beautiful part of the mask for me, is that there are now these instrumental bands in Mexico that play with masks on like we do. So we borrowed from their culture and they took from our culture, and it's a nice respectful exchange in a really fun way, a celebratory way of just sort of appreciating. We're all North Americans, we're neighbors, and it's just, it's fun.
Now, we've been talking about your band work, but you also do some solo stuff. We here in the Riley household love the traveling guitar and more traveling guitar. You kind of made them your own and set yourself apart from Los Straitjackets.
Well, I appreciate you bringing those up, Beth, because I really have had a great time making those. They really first came about because when I joined Los Straitjackets, we put out Jet Set, which is a record of all original instrumentals. And it's a record I'm super proud of. Actually, the whole band is. We're all very fond of that record. And after that, I thought, okay, we're going to do another record of original songs, so I better get writing. But what we ended up doing is we did a collaboration with Deke Dickerson. Oh, yeah. We did a collaboration with the Fleshtones and Southern Culture and the Skids. We did a record of Nick Lowe, songs done instrumentally. So we were doing these concept records, and the original stuff has been set aside, and I totally understand that. And I'm glad we did the records that we've done. But as a result, I've had kind of a surplus of these original instrumentals or covers, sort of arrangements of covers that are kind of an original approach to those things, to the covers. So I just, in order to just do something with them, I started to do the traveling guitar records. It also gave me an opportunity to sell some things at the merch table. Everybody's got in the band has their solo, their side projects. So it enabled me to do that too. And I thought, well, with the Straitjackets, it should be, a record of, I should be putting out instrumentals. So that's kind of where that came from. And with the help of Todd Bradley from the High Risers, who plays a lot of bass and drums and does some mixing and on those records. I put out those two.
Man, that's cool. You bring up High Risers. You guys have had some recent recordings come out on High Tide Recordings.
We have a new single out on High Tide, and it's one side is Smooth Operator and the other side is Hot Banana, and it which is a cover of a 1950s jump kind of tune. And both of those are Trevor Lake based. The last record we put out, My Kind of Fun, Trevor joined right at the tail end of the recording of that record. And I was able to get him on a couple of tunes, including one that he wrote called Where Are You Tonight? That's become sort of a fan favorite. But I want to incorporate Trevor more and more into the band as we go along. So he wrote Smooth Operator. That's his original tune. And then he brought Hot Banana to the band to cover. So that's those two songs are the single. And High Tide Recordings has been just unbelievable. I mean, they've been putting out the More Traveling Guitar records and the High Risers stuff, and just everything on their label is fantastic. They're just great. So
you produced some albums for Hillbilly Moon Explosion, like Buy Bag or Still and Damn Right Honey. Is it easy for you to switch gears from going to artist to producer?
It's something I love to do. If I could do that, I wish I could do more of that. I love going into a situation and just trying to bring the best out of everyone. I know, to answer your question, I don't have trouble shifting gears. I really, really enjoy it. And my experience with the Hillbilly Moon Explosion, especially the Buy Bag or Steel record, was just magical. It was just a magical time for everybody. I think in everyone's career, there's Nick Lowe says that, you have these moments where someone taps you on the shoulder and just says, it's your time now. And with that Buy Bag or Steel record, everything came together for everybody, and it made for a very successful record. I'm so happy that it helped elevate their career. I had a great experience. Everybody did. The engineers on the record. We did it in London with my dear friend Neil Brockbank Engineering, and it was just wonderful. It was a wonderful record, and they had a hit. They had a hit with My Love Forevermore out of those sessions. In the States, it's well known, but in Europe it was really, really successful with the combination of the recording and the video they did. It's like a standard there. So I'm very proud of that, that they were able to achieve that kind of success with something that we collaborated on.
I'm a big fan of them, but that song in particular is one of the reasons why I like them so much.
Well, Beth, it's great to hear you say that. I could tell you a little story behind that if you want.
Sure.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
We like story time.
It's a pretty interesting story, because here's the most successful song off that record. I mean, I think the whole record is great, but that was the standout tune for fans, and it almost didn't happen. And I have to say that, the idea behind it, the duet with Sparky and Emanuela, was Oliver's. It was his idea. And when we were doing pre-production for the record, I was in Rochester and he was in Zurich, Switzerland, and we were working on the songs, and he sent that song to me, and I helped him with it. At that point, it was just called A Minor Duet. I helped him write the introduction, what starts as down. That was something I added to it, and we worked on the structure together. And he said, I have this idea, I want to have this duet. And I wasn't aware of Sparky and Demented Argo. They weren't on my radar, partly because they never played the United States. I guess they arrived in the United States to tour at one point, and Sparky immediately got thrown into jail.
Yeah,
I don't know.
You're right.
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know what the story is on that. But anyway, I did my research and my homework, and I thought, okay, I can hear what Oliver's getting at. It's sort of a sweet and salty, sort of combination here of voices. And I could see how this could work. Okay, that's good. Yeah, all right, let's do that. Well, when I arrived in London and we started the sessions for the record, Sparky was nowhere to be seen. I couldn't find him. I mean, you know, frankly, he was homeless at the time. You know, it was, and I was very concerned because the date was coming up that we were going to record that particular tune, and we couldn't track him down. So Oliver was really kept at it, you know. I was ready to say, well, look, you know, as a producer, I'm trying to come up with other plans here. I was like, well, Oliver, maybe you could sing the duet, or Duncan, the guitar player, could do it. But Oliver was insistent, no, we got to find Sparky. So we eventually found his girlfriend at the time, who was very sweet, who was really taking care of him. She made it happen. So the day of the session, we still didn't know whether he was going to show up. Lo and behold, he shows up. Well, Sparky was not in the best of shape. We're all on the same, you know, space, sharing the same space. And Sparky was just taking the air out of the room. He was just so... He was in a state, you know.
Yeah.
This is in the afternoon, by the way. So we get him, you know, corralled. I had a guitar. Let's run through this. Let's get this down. And he just could not get it. He wanted to get it. He liked the song. He wanted to do it, but he just could not get it. He just couldn't come in on time. He couldn't get the phrasing, and he was getting really frustrated. The more that he was screwing it up, the more he'd get angry. And again, as a producer, I'm like, oh God, this is a disaster. Well, we finally got him just enough so that it's like, okay, let's roll it. Let's do it. And we're doing this all live, you know. Amanda Whaler's doing her part at the same time as Sparky. So we do a take, and he wouldn't come in on time. It was like, oh, and we'd stop, and he'd be angry. I mean, and swearing, and, you know. And so this is the truth. I swear this is the truth. In order for him to come in on time with his line, I got a broom, you know, turn it around. And when it was his time to come in with his line, you know, I poked him in the back, and he'd come in like...
Oh my God!
I mean, this is happening when if you listen closely to the recording, you can hear, you know, like when he first comes in, he's sort of no, because I'm poking him in the back. It's like, okay,
oh my
now.
Now everybody's gonna have to go listen to this right now.
And it was funny because we got through one take, and I said, "That's it, we got it." And of course, we hadn't got it, and you know. And Neil Brockbank said, "Come on, Greg, you know, we're going to have to do more takes than this." But I was like, "Okay, yeah, right. Let's keep going." And you know, it got better as it went along. But you know, the truth of it is that after he left, you know, we all like it was like, whew, and we went to work and we kind of pasted it together, and it just came together, and everything that you know Oliver thought that would happen happened. And then I put Grant Watkins on organ, and it just gelled. Like, this is it. You know, so you just never know what goes behind you.
Sure.
And then it went out, and they did this video, and it just took off. Like, you know, and it was just out of this crazy session, which believe me, I'm sanitizing for you. There's more to it. I don't want to say.
You're leaving out the good stuff.
It was crazy. It was crazy. Now, in Sparky's defense, I worked with him again, and he was great, totally professional. Was there on time, was, you know, ready to work. You know, we just caught him in a time that was difficult for him, but he loved the end result of My Love Forevermore. He absolutely loved it, and has performed it with the Hillbilly Moon Explosion on occasions, on special occasions. So it's been a great thing for everybody. So I'm very proud of how it all came together. And it was a rough beginning. That's what makes an artist great, you know. I mean, you know, sometimes the crazier, the better the art. I don't know. That's just the way it works sometimes.
And he probably got better because of the broom and, all the back pain that he experienced. That's probably what made him get into a groove there.
Yeah, that's true, Beth. I mean, I have to say that, from then on, I was carrying the broom around with me to every production job I ever got. Okay, you better get it right, or, you'll get the broom.
Oh, man.
They're a great band. I mean, Hillbilly Moon Explosion they are so special. They are really unique. I mean, there is no other band that sounds like them. They just, I really enjoyed the time working with them, and I followed them. I like the stuff they've done since we worked together, and it's just all good stuff.
So where is the best place for people to find out more information on you and new releases, new music you got coming out?
Well, Bandcamp has ended up being a pretty good home for everybody. I've got the Traveling Guitar records up there, and I've also got the Just Name It EP, which is I've done 3 releases of pop songs, On Your Side, My Friend the Night, and Just Name It. So those are available on Bandcamp. And I also have a website that I need to update, but that's that's there. Facebook is a good place. I'm terrible at self-promotion. It's not a strength of mine. I need to, I just don't post enough about what I'm doing. So I appreciate you asking, Beth. And I would say that those would be the places, the Bandcamp, and my website and Facebook. And please drop a line and say hello.
And what is your website?
GregTownson.com.
Okay.
Yeah.
The solo releases, the High Risers, Los Straitjackets, producing with some broom therapy. There is, we've covered a whole lot. This has been fantastic. We both really enjoyed so much stuff that you've been involved with, and excited to hear. It seems like there's always some new Los Straitjackets things that just I literally had just finished a Christmas show, and then I see this new Nick Lowe and Los Straitjackets, and I'm like, I gotta go back in there and make sure and make room for this. So,
well, that's very kind of you, James, and both of you. This was a total pleasure. Great questions, and I really appreciate what both of you are doing, Beth and James. You're keeping this music alive, and you're supporting these artists like myself that are out here doing it and trying to make it happen. So we're keeping traditions alive here, and I really appreciate you giving me a buzz today.
And it's been fun.
It's been real fun.
Oh, great. It's been fun for me, too.